Hi, everybody. Hang on just a minute. I got to click on my Periscope so that we go live there too as well. Righty. Periscope so that we go live there too. Look, I can hear myself. Yay. Periscope so that we go live there too. Look, I can hear myself. Yay. All right, I think we're going live. Yay. All right, we are live on Periscope as well. Hi, everybody. If you're watching on Periscope or Facebook, welcome to 9 a.m. Hangout with Julie. I still haven't decided. You guys haven't commented on whether we should call it the 9 a.m. coffee break or the 9 a.m. book break. I don't even have coffee with me today because I've already had my 2 cups and I can't have any more right now. So I'm trying to find where the lighting is the best because I keep it changes back and forth. So hopefully that doesn't bother you too much. Anyway, so what I would love to talk about today is introverts and extroverts. And I came up with this idea or this topic or whatever because I was on Facebook this morning before I started writing. And somebody had commented on how great it was to be able to write like you talk. And I'm like, yes, that's the advice that a lot of people give, and I give the same advice. And it just sort of triggered something in my head that I remembered from a class I took from an amazing man named Dr. Grant. He's in Austin, Texas, and he's an expert in Myers-Briggs profiles and introverts and extroverts and thinkers and perceivers and like all of those letters, right? Those ESTP, ENTJ. All those guys. There's 16 of them. I'm not going to repeat them all. So one of the things that he pointed out and made me think really hard was that introverts and extroverts are different, and you have to approach how you do things differently depending on which one you are. But we're not taught any of this stuff in school. We're not taught. Number one, most of us don't even know which one we are. We just think we're either, quiet and shy and reserved, and therefore we think we're introverts, or we are, out there and in people's faces and loud and obnoxious, and therefore we must be an extrovert. But that's not necessarily true. And what we perceive as what we think we are may not be what we are, and we may change back and forth. So let's start by figuring out what you are. The first thing you can do later, not now, keep listening, but later on, if you're not sure which one you are, and if you want to get more of a profile on your personality type, you can go to, I think there's 16types.com or something like that. Just Google, personality type test, and you'll come up with it. The first thing you gotta realize is these are preferences. These are not set in stone permanent things. You're not always an introvert or always an extrovert, and you can slide back and forth on the scale. I am smack in the middle. I can go either way, whichever time I want, and that means that I can get along with both sides and easier because I understand how they react and how they think and how they process information. It's easy for me to go, oh, you need time to think about things, or oh, you need to talk out loud. So just knowing which type you are is a really big help, and knowing what that means is a really big help for deciding what advice to take, because not every piece of advice is meant for everyone. And let me tell you something, it really makes a difference if you're listening to advice in the entrepreneurial space. I just got a cool comment. I'm like, I can see comments now, at least on Periscope. Oh, it went away. Somebody said that it depends, introvert, extrovert, depends on the situation. Exactly. It depends on the situation. It depends how you're feeling that day. Did you get enough sleep? Did you get enough to eat? Are you feeling grumpy? All those, there's all kinds of different reasons why you might be sliding one way or the other. Some people are flat on one side or flat on the other, and they don't ever change, and that's okay. This is not, it's just a preference for how you do things, okay? And I don't want to say it has nothing to do with being shy and quiet and reserved, or being really loud and liking lots of crowds. It has to do with those are the outward characteristics, and that's how we tend to categorize people if we even think about it, which most people don't. But what it really has to do with is how you recharge your energy. How, if you have internal batteries and you're like drained and you're tired, what is it that recharges you? And it has to do with how you process information. And that's the more important thing for writing. So let's just real quickly, if you are an introvert, being around people drains you, and being alone is how you recharge. Okay? And being an extrovert, being around people recharges you, and when you're alone, you get drained. And so for me, I'm right in the middle, and it really depends on the situation and who I'm with and how things happen and what's going on. But if I'm alone in the house too much writing, I will get like drained sometimes. I'm like, oh, I've got to go out and be with some people. And sometimes when I'm out with people, like at conferences and things where there's thousands of people to talk to, and I'm just like, oh, I'm overwhelmed. I need to go back to my room. So I go both ways. But you just need to be aware. And really what I want you guys to get out of this whole thing is being aware of what you are and at any given moment or any given day, and how you can use that and use two different techniques in your writing to make the writing more natural and more easy for you. Okay. Now, that's having to do with energy. I don't even want to talk about that today. I want to talk about how you process information. So, extroverts have to talk out loud. We talk between people to process ideas. Dr. Grant likes to say that creativity and your creativity lab, like where you come up with concepts and ideas, happens in between two people or a bunch of people talking out loud. We process outside of ourselves. Okay. Introverts process internally. They have to think everything through and make sure they know exactly what they want to say, and then they will say it. Their idea lab, their creativity lab, all happens inside them. Neither one is right or wrong. Seriously, they're both totally cool. You just need to know which one it is. And if you are an introvert and you prefer to think about things before you say them, you probably find yourself getting annoyed with people who are always talking. Like, why are you talking so much? Shut up until you know what you want to say. Like, stop talking. You're babbling, right? And the other way around happens when extroverts are like, why I don't get why you don't ever talk up in meetings. Why don't you ever participate in the conversation? It's because they're introverts and they have to think about it first. They are participating in the conversation, but they're not going to tell you about it until the next day. So how you process your information, when you know that, if you prefer email, if you like to think about things before you say something, if you like to have a plan before you go into action, you're probably an introvert, or at least partially an introvert on that day. If you like to talk to people to come up with ideas, if you need sounding boards to bounce ideas off of, if you like to talk, you're probably on the extrovert side. Now, here's the deal in the entrepreneurial space, in the business space, all of the systems that are around that space and the advice that people give you are extrovert slanted, okay? Because most entrepreneurs are extroverts. Like there's like a 50-50 split in the overall population, but a lot of extroverts in the entrepreneurial space, in the business space, in the expert space, all of that stuff, like speakers and coaches and experts and people who I tend to attract to these lives. So I'm like talking to you guys. You're probably leaning a little on the extrovert side, but that's not for everybody. Okay. Not every entrepreneur is an extrovert. Not every business person is an extrovert. And so what happens is these people who are introverts in this space listen to the advice given out all over the internet or all over conferences, or whoever they follow is just like they're talking about all of these techniques and strategies and things like this, and the introverts are like, oh, but that doesn't work for me. It's so hard. Why is it so hard to write a blog post? I don't get why it's so hard. I'm doing everything they're telling me to do. So I want to give you two different techniques. Okay, there's two sides, and there's actually a few different things. So I'm going to talk about three things. I'm going to talk about writing like you talk. I'm going to talk about speaking your book. And I'm going to talk about planners versus pantsers. If you don't know what that is, I'll tell you in a second. So the first piece of advice that it's going around the book writing circles and the publishing schools and all of these places that help teach you how to write. They're all saying, write like you talk. You have to write like you talk. Now, that's good advice in one way and bad advice in another way. It's good advice in that, yes, you want to write conversationally. You want to write the way that you would normally talk or normally converse with people or normally write to people. Okay, you don't want to artificially inflate what you're writing with big fancy words and complex sentence structure and big long paragraphs, because that's not how anybody communicates. So it's more like the advice should be write like you communicate naturally. Okay, because that allows for both introverts and extroverts. Extroverts, write like you talk is great advice. It's like, oh my gosh, yes, I love to talk. I'm talking all the time. I'm creating, great information and great creativity back and forth between people. I talk all the time. I can totally write like I talk. Introverts are like, oh God, no, I hate talking. I freaking hate talking. I don't want to write like I talk. I don't talk well unless I think about it first. So for them, if you think write like you think, that's a little bit better advice for introverts. Okay, write like you think. Now, the beauty is that introverts prefer writing to talking. So they can easily, write like I think. That's easy. I just type. Just whatever is in your head, you don't have to massage it and inflate it and use bigger words and long complex sentences and everything. Just write the way you think naturally. If you were going to think, sometimes introverts have voices going on inside their heads. They have different, they're actually doing the talking. It's just that they're doing the talking inside themselves. So write like you normally converse. Write like you have a conversation normally and naturally. And that will work for both sides. Okay, so if you're an introvert, you don't have to write like you talk. You can write like you think. That's the same advice. It's just a different side. It's a different way to think about it. And sometimes when I tell people that, they're like, oh my God, I have permission to not write like I talk. Yay! So I just want you to be aware of that. And if you are an extrovert or you are an influencer and you write blog posts and you have a podcast and you're always telling people write like you talk, maybe think about the fact that some of the people listening to you don't get that. They don't understand what you're saying. They're like, why do I want to write like I talk? I hate talking. So just be aware when you're interacting with other people and you're giving advice and things like that there are two sides of the coin. The other piece of that the advice that's going around in book circles especially is you don't have to write your book. You can speak your book, meaning you dictate all the content into your phone or into some kind of a recording device, get it transcribed, and then use that as your first draft, and you massage it and you have to actually write. You do have to write, but you can speak the main content first. Now that's great for extroverts. Again, it's not great advice for introverts because they would rather die than speak their ideas into a recording device. People who are way over on the introvert spectrum. If you're in the middle, you can probably massage it either way, and it'll probably, for me, it changes either way. Sometimes I want to record and sometimes I want to write. Introverts prefer to write. Extroverts prefer to speak. So if you're an introvert, great, you are lucky. We are all jealous of you that you can just type and write and everything comes out and it's beautiful, right? Maybe not beautiful the first draft, that's okay, but but you can totally take what's in your head and put it on paper. And extroverts don't get that. We just don't get it. We would way rather just talk to somebody and answer a bunch of questions and get the ideas out of us than sit and type with our mouths closed and just what's in our head comes through our fingers. That doesn't work for extroverts. And because most entrepreneurs and most people in the business space are extroverts, they prefer to speak. So therefore, the prevailing advice in the book world anyway right now is speak your book. You don't have to. Do what is natural for you. And do what is natural for you on any given day, because you may, like I said, flip back and forth, right? So the final piece is planners versus pantsers. Now, this is an ongoing debate with fiction writers. They're always like, oh, I'm a planner, I'm a pantser, I just, and there's like this animosity almost sometimes because one side thinks they're right and the other side thinks that they're right, and then there's this like headbutting going on. So a planner is somebody who outlines everything they want to say. They write it down, they know exactly what they're going to say before they write. They have this really detailed plan of what they're going to write, whether it's a blog post or a speech or a book. Doesn't matter. They have a really long, detailed plan. Now, what does that sound like? That's somebody who's thinking first and then sharing. So that's an introvert method of writing, okay? Pantsers, me, I'm a pantser. Who else is a pantser out there? We fly by the seat of our pants. We just start going, okay? We just start going. We just start writing, and we don't know where we're going to go. We don't know where, we have some sort of vague idea of where we want to end up, but we don't know how we're going to get there. And we just talk because that's how we normally communicate. We normally converse by sharing ideas between people and then writing them down or then codifying them or whatever. We have a meeting first. We have a board meeting first. We have a company meeting first. We talk about the ideas and then we write them down. So for a pantser, doing an outline, for me, when I used to try to write fiction, and I don't write fiction, but when I was really young, like 30 years ago, I tried to write fiction, and it was so hard because I thought I had to have a plan. And by the time I wrote out my outline and I knew all the things that were going to happen, I didn't want to write it anymore. I was done. Like the creativity happened and I was done. And I'm like, well, now I don't need to write it because I already know what's going to happen. So my whole point is there are natural ways for introverts to write and create, and there are natural ways for extroverts to write and create. And they're both right. They're both right. They're both perfectly fine because both sides end up with amazing books and amazing blog posts and amazing guest posts. And, there's no wrong way to do it. If you are having a hard time following advice or following an idea that you have in your head that you have to do it one way and it's a struggle, maybe try the other way. Maybe try not planning your stuff. Maybe try being a pantser just for a day and see what happens, right? Maybe you need to not speak your book and you need to just write, and it's okay to just write. And if you have a natural flow that comes from your brain through your fingers, be grateful because you're blessed. That's an amazing talent that you have, and it's totally natural for you. It's not totally natural for other people. So it's an individual preference whether you want to write your book or type your book. Right? Speak your book or type your book. It's a natural preference whether you want to plan everything out detail by detail or whether you want to just have a general roadmap and kind of fly by the seat of your pants. I'm getting really dark on this screen and it's kind of annoying, but there we go. I think it's because I have natural light coming from the windows and every time a cloud goes by, it gets darker. Sorry about that. Anyway, whatever way you write, if you're getting a book out there or you are getting content out there or you're getting social media posts out there, good for you. You're doing it right. If you are struggling, try doing it the other way. Just for fun, one day, and see what happens. And if you notice that sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work, maybe you're in between, like me, and you need to be able to know which technique's going to work today. Which technique is going to get me farther along today? And realize that you might flip tomorrow. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. As long as you're writing, everything's cool. All right, so that's all I have for you today. This is our 9 a.m. coffee break. Oh, look, I just said coffee break, so maybe that's the natural. Maybe I should just go with that. Anyway, if you want to get notified about these live daily, we're doing Monday through Friday, every day at 9 a.m. If you want to get notified, you want to come and hang out with me live, you can follow me on Facebook at Julianne Eason. You'll find just the little, it's right. Ooh, I can't point and actually have it show up. It's right there. at the top. Julianne Easton, look me up on Facebook. Also, if you're on Twitter or Periscope, I'm at BizBookWriter. I would love to hang out with you if you have any questions. Awesome. So here's the deal, guys. Yesterday I said I promised I would have a second computer, so I could see comments and I could answer questions and things. And I do. I actually have the computer. It's like right there. But guess what? I haven't used it in like 3 years. And so my software was way out of date, and like Firefox wouldn't work, and none of my I couldn't even get to Facebook. So once again, I couldn't see the comments, but I promise I will go back to them, and if you have any questions or whatever, I'll go through and comment on those as well. And you can always ask me questions inside of Julianne Easton's, like my page on Facebook, and you can always ask me questions on Twitter. So I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope it gives you kind of permission to experiment with different ideas, and I hope it gives you permission to not take the prevailing advice if it doesn't work for you. Because everybody's different, and there's all kinds of advice out there. You can find both sides of the coin, and it might work for you, it might not. So try it out and see what happens, and stay in touch. Talk to you tomorrow.